Welcome. So, I found some cool stuff that I'm going to share, and we're going to go through and go from there. So, let's see what's going on in previous episodes. Previously on Underground Science, we went over. Okay, I got nothing. I'm sorry, guys. If you wanted follow up, this is all I got. Is the brow, the hand. I'm like a, I'm like a scientist. Psh, 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 psh. So previously, we were talking about these currents, which seem to be generally accurate. There might be some variation in this or subtlety. Uh, and if we go to North America, which has some reason, I might have one with Hudson Bay. I don't have the one with Hudson Bay, but there's an eddy here, and then there's an eddy centered at Hudson Bay, as we've talked about before, that are effectively occupying the space over here, an eddy centered at Hudson Bay that's generally occupying to the Rockies and across like here, pretty much. And then another eddy down here. So we've kind of gone through that, but we haven't. It's definitely a little odd. So something occurred to me yesterday that I think is really valid in the subtleties here. So I was trying to essentially say, well, let's say, like, this teal, I started with this teal. Let's say there's a teal like, boundary here. So if we just follow here, go over here, go over here, and when we get to here, we can just kind of follow these over this way to here, and then through here along this boundary to here, which then really before this opened went right to here, continuously conjoining the loop. So there's a loop there, then there's the larger loop that maybe I'd draw in a bit more here. So we got this green one that's generally, maybe, like, I think they're essentially what I'm getting at is that there was an eddy that was centered on generally Hudson Bay when the Earth expansion process was early on and the global flood was happening before the continents broke apart and all the continents were conjoined as a single landmass, but the flood was beginning. There was an earlier stage where an eddy formed atop basically the Rencha, which I have interpreted to be the ocean pre-expansion, since the pre-expansion Earth had no oceanic crust. The ocean was somewhere on the continental crust, the cratons pretty much that pre-existed the expansion that goes back to at least 541. I saw today something that made me think maybe it's more like 600 when it really began, and then 541 is when maybe it like accelerated in some like fundamental way that I don't know makes it like a relevant moment in time in terms of pre-Cambrian, Cambrian. Okay, so then I noticed, well, if we just kind of look here, well, there's another kind of center here. So let's say somewhere in Hudson Bay, I ended up putting it along this boundary, like a eye of the storm of this whirlpool of water during the flood that was occurring here that had a eye section, like a whirlpool, that was, I guess, kind of inclining water down to a point where it actually etched in that area more. Perhaps, I don't know. But essentially, the nucleus, the eddy, had a center that had needed to like rest somewhere. If it was on like a mountaintop, it's not stable because it has this huge eddy. So basically, it needed a bowl, and it made a bowl in this area. But then the Earth started to expand, and the stable position in the flows of water that this eddy could be in seems to have shifted over here. So the nucleus shifted here. And then I believe it shifted here, possibly. Like going across terrain to go here. And then even kind of forming like an eye to the eye. And then going over here where it like pushed apart because there was actually a cutting of the earth happening here enough that it pushed apart this region, maybe like an eddy that was centered here, but the nucleus region like moved as it was shifting to a new stable position that would ultimately be at the North Pole from what was maybe maybe at that early time the North Pole. I haven't looked into, let's see, where was the North Pole 541 MA? That's now, let's see, Scholar, North Pole position, ancient, I don't know, geology, something. I guess I need like paleomagnetic North Pole, Cambrian, let's say. Okay, this kind of time frame. North China block. Multi-component magnetization from Zawidal. New Cambrian and Ordovician paleomagnetic poles for the North China block, which we were just looking at in the last episode, and their paleogeographic implications. 1992, Solid Earth, Journal of Geophysical Research. Okay, we could probably just click this, might as well. Nope, didn't work. Worth a shot, maybe do this real quick. Abstract. This had PDF in it. Maybe. Okay, whatever. I could probably find it, but let's move on. Maybe find it if I went to Sci-Hub. Let's try it. Fuck it. I'll do like this. And then do this. And do this. And do this. I'm not sure how much of this it needs. I always talk about like, we're doing research here. It's not my fault. This is not appropriately accessible. Anyway, yeah, it's a cool place to get some geology papers, I think. I believe a vast amount of them are accessible there. Pardon me as I do things that maybe are frowned upon or more worse. Where were we? A well-defined component with lower unblocking temperature is characterized by northerly declination and moderate to steep inclination with polarities and post-dates. The late Cretaceous folding. I think I skipped all this. Sediment. Let's just read it again, sorry. Multi-component magnetization has been revealed in several Cambrian and Ordovician sedimentary units from localities in Hebei and Shandong provinces of the North China block. Okay. The pole position, let's just go to this, derived from the overprinted directions is close to both the Cretaceous pole for the North China block as well as the present North Pole. Okay, so this will give us probably an actual, like, based on the rocks in the North China block, where the relative pole was at, based on paleomag data there. So it's not that it was the North Pole, it's that using, I'm hoping they just have like an Earth image with the pole on it. Very close to modern in late Cretaceous. Very reminiscent of YouTube. The geology of Antarctica, something. This is incredible, honestly, this video. If I can find it. Really good video in general too, but this video right here was like, whoa. So remember, the Earth is expanding, so it's in a different framework where this ocean just is really not there. It's really coupled. Interestingly, even pointed out an anomaly that was recently explained by Antarctica, where fossils were found in the Americas, and then also found in Australia, which makes sense because it was adjacent to the Americas when it was connected over there because the Earth expanded. So it doesn't even really need Antarctica as like a jumping point to go between continents. It just gives a little more proximity. Anyway, this video is cool. This is what I want to show, though. Notice the time. Okay, hold up. Notice we started at 200. Here's Antarctica. Here's India. Here's the presumed pole, which I guess is opening. It's probably actually opening. Like, this is over here, but there's like a space, so there's nothing actually physically continentally at the pole at the time, because there's an eddy here that's like breaking everything apart pretty much. The eddy center at the pole that was happening opposite to the other eddy center that were like the two poles that ended up cutting around Antarctica. But the reason it did that is because of what happens here. 160, 150, 140, 130. Now at 130, 120, we notice we start seeing things break apart. In that time frame when the Ontong Java, basically when Hawaii was released from its incubation under the Ontong Java Nui Australia system that it was being birthed from, pretty much, as a physical 100-kilometer-ish radius sphere that rolled through the Earth's crust and broke apart, and once it reached the North Pole, was flung away like a compass. Where's that compass? Once it reached, it basically went between the crust, reached the North Pole, and then the North Pole reacted by flinging it away, opening up the Pacific region, but also creating an arc in the process. But on the other side, while that's happening, there's an eddy that's like centered on like ocean, I guess. Some kind of this stuff. Just probably this stuff. Generally centered on all this. I guess it is. There is something in there, so I guess it's centered on that. And all of this is just breaking up around the center of the eddy as it just cuts into it, pretty much. And then they start moving apart. Okay, 109, 108, 193. At not now notice the change. Antarctica is over here. Let me just play it the rest of the way entirely. Now imagine it got caught in the center of this eddy. Like the eddy was happening atop it. And along its boundaries, it was cutting, like, to the point where it created, this. While it was closer to Antarctica, cutting between the continents and then opening the space between as the Earth expanded and ocean floors were formed in the currents of the whole process. But an eddy forming here that's going around this way. One more time. It'll play any second there. Maybe I'll slow it down, actually. Oh, it takes some of the debris and attaches it to it. Like this debris field where the eddy was centered. Some of it gets attached, like stays attached to South America, but some of it reforms together. Looks like a current went through that way and pushed that out, while just out exterior pressures kind of held it together. And then maybe it continued to get out to the point where it actually pushed them out there, but the rest of it stayed together. So there was a current going generally across that way, also going across that way, and swirling around like this. Oh, he plays it again. Oh, no, he doesn't. Lots of really interesting stuff in this video also, but so the thing is I believe that something of this nature happened where it had an eddy center here and then moved over here, and somehow it got generally to over here. Maybe these circles are not all correct. Maybe they're not the totality of them all, if all correct. Maybe both of these things, not the totality and not all correct. Like, maybe not here, maybe not here. This gave me the impression that it moved here just by this boundary and the general, like this boundary. Like it moved from over here and maybe had a more elongated shape that moved over here and then over here and seems maybe more elongated than just like a single focal point that's like circular almost. Like it has like two core systems maybe. And then moving over here. See, my interpretation was it moved over here, and then it tried to get over here, but it really couldn't. It had all this resistance. And in the meantime, it was carving a path this way. That was basically allowing it to have a path around Greenland, and it found a way to this path here where there's another current that was propagating, I believe, along this boundary and running into resistance and going generally this way around here, which was then weakening this area and this area. So it basically carved a depression for this current to flow into. So it migrated through that depression and then probably helped push the earth apart here as it moved through, possibly playing a role in the formation of Iceland, and then made its way over here, is what I'm thinking, to like here, specifically there, and like around there for some reason, I don't know. And maybe bounded over here, like as if it happened before it really spaced apart, I don't know. Although it looks like maybe after, if like this one's definitely questionable, they're all questionable, but just generally a propagation of an eddy appears to be there. And specifically this teal eddy or aqua eddy, I put it the other way because if you guys saw the episode where I was talking about this here and how basically Hudson Bay was swirling like this and the current is going this way, but some of the current, instead of going this way, it ran into other currents over here. So it ran into it and instead led to a current flow off of Hudson Bay this way. So that's pretty much what I have here though, but doing it in more of a orderly way, that it's part of this eddy at that time. where it's not just emitting like a jet stream off this way, but it's more so following this eddy and then running into a eddy going the other way that's actually running along the boundaries of the Rockies going the other way. That's more out here and around this way, and then up to the Appalachians and going up and around this way, like up here and across here, to specifically here, notably, like that. So an eddy is going here. Now remember, Flemish Cap is over here with a current pushing it this way, and that current goes this way along that path. But notice Flemish Cap didn't make it past that. So it's almost like this current is pushing into Flemish Cap, but it's running in, that's going this way. So there's like this teal current, or aqua, is also extending down here. So maybe let's go a little further. Before I change images, let's just go to this one. This teal current also extending like directly across this way, along this path, just following this path, and then bending off here though, because there's resistance, and going over into this area where it then funnels over that way along this path into this area. But where Flemish Cap was here and it ends up over here, because there was this current, this fuchsia current, that it was being pushed into, that basically held it from going further that way. Because it could have theoretically gotten pushed in the current this way and like been over here and then like attached, let's say been attached to North America, like here or somewhere else. But that's not where the Appalachians had this backstop that was directing current this way to then hold this other current going the other way from extending past it enough to actually move Flemish Caps into that current. So it just positioned it there essentially. So this gives credence to that, also to that these currents have some validity in terms of the Flemish Cap aspect of it that we've talked about in other places. Also, I just added this other current coming from Antarctica. So there's this current wrapping around Antarctica, but then going up this way along Africa and India to go up this way and across this way, basically at this width. The inner boundary here though, that then generally ends up going over here, is what I interpret, into this area, which feeds into the formation of the Rockies by going this way and all the things that maybe we can get to another post I made. But then that because that current is there, and then this other eddy is there that's going this way, that's at some point, because this teal current or aqua current is pushing it, it's pushing into it, it like moves its flow over here, as well as it pushing into it over here where it's coming back. So it's coming back over here, but then it ends up coming back down here. So it's as if this eddy is growing in intensity while it's moving to a different position, where these two opposing eddies that are like almost like a core eddy that's going in the opposite direction of the surrounding eddy, like the flower of life thing that I don't know where it is. I feel like it's in here for some reason, like this, where there's a general eddy, that is then inducing smaller eddies within it to a point where it actually induces a nucleus going the opposing direction. Whether or not the flower of life aspect of this is interpreted correctly, this general thing though, where there's an outside current leading to an outside eddy leading to an inside eddy going the opposite direction. These eddies though interact with one another. And so what I'm saying is, as one eddy, the bigger eddy is going counterclockwise here, running along the western or the eastern margin of the Rockies, holding the pressure while other currents push into the area and squeeze it all together basically and form the Rockies. That current is going southward along the boundary here, down over here and around over this way, and running into resistance if it doesn't like fuel down into the Gulf, and all the other things that happen goes around the Appalachians this way and goes that way. But it's generally going that way. But then there's it seems like opposing that, there's another current which is going in the opposite direction. So what does it do? It goes down. It cuts in, starts fueling into this area. But mind you, there's a current coming in and there's another current. So what are they doing? They're running into each other, creating an eddy where this current is running into an opposing current. So let's just take a picture real quick, just so I can draw on it. I had to freaking put in my phone number on Twitter today. I was like, Alright then. It's like I was spamming, because I was spamming an archaeologist. Sorry there, buddy. Hey, dude. We in this game here, we playing. So basically, it goes over here, which runs into resistance. There's some other pressures over here that it just runs into resistance here. And it's generally eddying, like the whole region is generally eddying, like so, but this current's coming in here. And as it runs into this, it goes basically like, oh shit. But then it runs into this up here as it goes this way. Runs into this, oh shit. So it goes back. Then it runs into itself, oh shit. And forms an eddy. That then is the eddy at the Hudson Bay region. Wow. This eddy is just generally going like this and holding pressure here against this, so that this eddy can't move. It's just getting fueled, it's getting held in space, in place, and it's actually forming an eddy. But in so doing, it starts to fuel through in opposition, like literally not this way, not this way. I realized recently I can erase on this. I was like, oh, but going this way. And as it just goes down into the crust and does like a turbulent flow, like where it cut, 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 and it's just cutting into regions. And also, like, there's Lake Agassiz or whatever it's called. Like, there's definitely glacial lakes that are not presently there, that are probably other systems of this nature that I'm not including here. Like, there's probably one here too, like going, like, generally up exactly instead of going exactly up into this, it can either go right or it can go left. So it probably fueled off like leftward and just eddied in some kind of way like this. Like in reality, there's probably something like that going on too. And then there's also an eddy over here, which I believe I was thinking, like, if this is going this way, like essentially an eddy over here. Related to this current going like up this way too, along resistance. So there's another eddy that's generally centered at the Finger Lakes. So there's those three eddies there, all relating to this presence of the second current, basically cutting in opposite direction to the overall eddy. Pretty significant. I think legit too. Okay, what else we got? We got some other stuff. So then I was thinking, well, maybe it just moved like this. Moved over here. There's the Flemish cab moving over there. There's this current going between them, which then ends up going over to Dammit Arkund, I believe. It's not sure. Not completely sure. To form shallograms. I suspect this current, this one goes across that way to go over here to form shallograms. And like is a crucial aspect of the shallogram formation, that there's maybe a cold current coming across to this very hot region that's like quickly quenching these like dissolved chemicals, pretty much the rock in the water that's like in the water, saturated in the water, maybe to a point where it's like more fluid, just like because of the heat though in the area that's also happening, like because there's also current flow going across this way from Australia, which is generally applying a hot current. And this area, it's probably hot, where the doom shape is. I'm realizing, like, whether it's hot currents or cold currents is playing a pivotal role in the outcome of things. I'm pretty sure that there's this cold current flowing in would have been, like, part of why shallograms were able to form. Almost like freezing them, but flowing water to shape them, but it's like cooling them off enough to solidify them. I don't know. Something of that nature. I mean, it's like a sediment, so I don't know if it would necessarily been hot. It's grains. It's not. It's free material that was moving. It wasn't like a solid stone. Grains of shale and quartz, like sand. Like sand, sandy type materials. But then this cold current coming in too. Feel like it's related. Let's keep going. Reach it, and then it basically expands. So here's my thought, is it kind of has a boundary here, this green one, which is lower, and then it extends its boundary past Greenland. The eddy like moves its boundary over past Greenland to have a stable additional boundary, and maybe even did so going the other way somehow, and then created a larger boundary still that was going the other way. Kind of, I guess, doing the flower of life things like this kind of somehow. I guess if there's something rotating here, then around it would start rotating this way, like going with it, with it, with it, but ultimately going this direction. So maybe it would lead to like different directions where there's like bands going one way and then a band going in the other way and then another band over here going that way. That seems plausible. I mean, it's certainly going on in like clouds and things like on Jupiter. Whether or not what I just said is why it's happening. But it seems like it like extends these two boundaries are then competing, almost forming a lobe of a ammonite of a shallogram out this way. Like almost doing something like that out. This way. Away from like a chakra. I was thinking maybe there's like a chakra over here. And another chakra. Maybe. Oh. And then a lobe out this way. And then another lobe that was over here, but the whole situation changed completely, so it's hard to trace comparatively compared to this way. But then this lobe like extends outward to larger boundaries that then seem to have gotten even larger boundaries, which is what we're looking at here. So it goes here, 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 and then continues down to Damodar Kund and generally the region of India of the Himalayas, not necessarily with them present yet, and then the fuchsia current moving down here. So I added this also, the current from Antarctica going up this way and across to the Rockies, but also bending to the path we mentioned there and going out that way, but also back through specifically there. I think it went through here. I think it went like around this way, through here, and like ran into resistance and bent here down the channel. Maybe ran into resistance here and went down this way. I feel like it. Or going along here. Basically down here to join a current going this way that we talked about before, where there's the two eddies here that are feeding current this way, and then that's running into the other eddy here, bending off here. But I believe that current then goes back to across here, where then it generally ran into here when like was going along here, ran off of Greenland, deflected around this way. Maybe also went across there, I don't. But essentially going through here as like the path of least resistance where the current was taking it. But flowing into resistance here, probably playing a role in the forming of the Alps. Some other current, like currents coming through this current coming through here, just generally applying pressure in this area across here. So when this current comes in and runs into it, it just like accumulates pressure here and deflects off and goes down that way and across. Some of which just continues though, joining this large eddy here. So like specifically notice there's this curve here that continues there, that if we just kind of follow it over across here to there, I know it kind of goes in there, but across here, around that way, around there, like generally around here, there, yeah, up through there and around that way, up through there, something of that nature though, where there's a eddy center of this purple one, but from Antarctica going to this eddy in Eurasia and then continuing to North America. While North America is emitting a current from North America back into the center of this eddy that's going in the opposite direction as this teal current, and a current that's going in the same direction as the pink current, which is more at one with the Antarctic current in terms of its flow directions. Then I saw there's a eddy here now known as the Beaufort Gyre, modern day eddy center at the North Pole still. Which then just posted this map of the gyres. And then I watched, or read, I don't know. Let's just read this post. Very interesting details about the Beaufort Gyre. From this Yale post, I guess. By Ed Struzik. How a wayward Arctic current could cool the climate in Europe. It accumulates sea ice at the North Pole, sort of like the Ice Age aspects of the global flood process related to North America in particular. So imagine there's an eddy that ends up over here at the North Pole from the global flood that even today is still present. And it followed this path, generally speaking, some path of this nature to go like to the North Pole for the eddy's center, and then it generally like died off in terms of not being on top of the surface of the crust, continental crust. The eddy is now in like down in the space, so it's kind of like more got arms out into the ocean, like reaching out, and then just a small eddy center here now, relatively. Where it doesn't have like a huge eddy like it used to, in terms of just like a disc. But if it's the same eddy, then that would mean it probably, when it was a larger eddy, also accumulated ice. It accumulates sea ice at the North Pole, meaning it is evidence that the eddies in North America would have been likely to do so as well if it is emergent from them, basically. And it may be on the verge of discharging a huge amount of ice and cold fresh water that could kick off a period of lower temperatures in northern Europe. This sounds pretty concerning, just like the Atlantic, whatever it is, AMOC. I don't remember what it stands for or something. Currents. This one. Both concerning. I mean, both related to the global flood, though, and not climate change. Both concerning, though, that's for sure. The concept, but the point is, the concept is on the verge of discharging a huge amount of ice and cold freshwater. This process of accumulation and discharge is very accumulation, discharge. So it like but where it's moving like a caterpillar. I did a video on this video before. Notice it's stagnant. There's all this flow behind it. It stagnates and then it moves forward. Like this segment starts moving, starts moving, starts moving, and then it gets to the front, and then enough forces behind it that the front moves, but then the overall pressure behind it relaxes so that the front boulders stop moving, and then behind it has to accumulate, and then these boulders move, and then behind it accumulates, and then the boulders move, and it just does this over and over. As this flow happens, it gives me the impression that it has this process of accumulation and discharge, maybe on the verge of discharge. That means it has a process of accumulation and discharge. It doesn't mean, oh, it's just accumulated and now we fucked the whole shit up and it's discharging. No, it does not mean that. It likely means, though, maybe it's moving. Like, oh, it moved from here to here to here to here to over here, back in this corner. It pretty much moved into this little corner. Maybe it's moving like that way. That would be crazy. Or just like over here some reason. I don't know why I would do this without really thinking about it. At least I can't even fathom why it would now move, except for just like some delayed, like the process is literally still happening. It's just so slowed down that it's like passing slow. Kind of like me talking sometimes, I guess. I said back pressure, but I meant just pressure build up behind. Like back pressure is still in front of, but like building up, I don't know. Maybe that there is a larger scale process of a moving eddy that ultimately moved to be centered in the cavity space of the North Pole as it effectively created for itself, but perhaps is weakening as the eddy effectively moves to a new position and intensifies elsewhere, perhaps, maybe, perhaps, effectively, perhaps, I don't know, but seems related. And then there was, this is also cool. This is in Antarctica. Chakra much? It's even got these. Oh my god. How incredible. Penguins just hanging out by the chakra. I don't know anything about this. Just there were several chakras in this video. I'm trying to find this. So I was watching this video on how the Earth was made that I link here. I'm gonna link all the Twitter posts, and they just mentioned some things that I thought were of interest that got me looking in this area. One of the things is there's like multiple fault lines down here. It's basically cutting the Earth open in this area, this current. But there's multiple currents. I tried to map them. Should I frickin' do this in another video again? The last one I tried to talk about, this one. This one's a little more in line with this topic, at least, because we're talking about here. But then that current that was flowing over down here from over here along this region, going just straight over here into here, running into resistance here, going down, but ultimately leading to like a artery going through here. That one down here that fed current down here, fed current through here, across this way, and then it vibrated through here. But so I tried to map it, and I was like, well, there's one going along here, and if you just follow it, the thing is, if you just follow it, like this boundary over here, if you just follow it, say, okay, a current went this way, and it continued over here, ran into resistance, and some of it went up that way, maybe, but some of it continued at like a little bit different energy to over here to extend that way, but that ended up running, and probably it did that first, and it started to run into resistance, so then build up like pressure here for it to then like ramp off of and go at a different angle. But then another current was going the opposite side over here, so it was like opening this space, and they vibrate and go back and forth while this one goes up, this one goes down, etc. So that's what this is, with also this current and this current. So this current's coming in here, then there's this red current. So if we go back, the one that goes along this boundary, like, and goes generally over here along this boundary, it's really going back this way. So I figured it was coming in generally off of Bighorn, wrapping around, and just flowing on down through that way until it ran into resistance and started to went across that way, across this way, and just vibrated down through here, however exactly the vibration would have gone, possibly splitting and things as well. And then that one, but then another one, so specifically like different inlets to this area. There's an inlet from this one, there's an inlet from this one, but then there's it seems to be inlets from over here as well. One from the Colorado Plateau, this green one, that's funneling that way, and another one, which I then was like, well, where are these coming from then? Essentially the outside, so the big eddy around the Hudson Bay has like a boundary current along the resistance of this other current flowing down this area, but especially down this channel. The boundary current moves the fastest here, and generally induces a current that interacts with this current and like joins it and like interlocks fingers almost to like thread them together, almost like sewing them together. This current goes down, over, runs into resistance here, which I mean, it's Bighorn. See, I feel like do I have a Bighorn playlist yet? I should probably have a Bighorn playlist. Heart Mountain, a couple others. Anyway, this current goes through here, goes across there. Specifically, I talk about in episodes about Heart Mountain. I think it's like 370 some reason. I don't know though. And then this current though, and then they interlock over here. But then there's this, which seems to be like there's these things. So if we go over here, there's this boundary that's flowing along there, two over here to then fuel in there. So for some reason there's a current flowing along this resistance. There's some other resistance over here related to other stuff. We don't necessarily have to worry about it in like analyzing flows right here because they go like into it. Not exactly sure. It looks like something to do with this area, like exhausting that way too. It probably was exhausting because there's another current flowing up this way and up into this other current, so they're meeting head on in this area, and it's possible that that then exhausted out this way out at the top point here to then just add another current exhaust into this area, which then itself maybe cut through over to the Rockies as well and add another feeding current from this area, from basically the current going up this way, and then current going this way went through the pink and teal paths, or aqua and fuchsia paths. But the fuchsia path went further south so that it didn't just follow the artery. It actually branched off the artery down into this area where it went into the Missoula flood area, whereas this is where the Bonneville flood area is. So the Bonneville flood area was exhausting that way probably, where this area was exhausting this way, up this way, just through the resistance of the Idaho batholith. And then it got over the top of it and drained down in like multiple current paths here for some reason. Probably because this was kind of shoving into it. And then when it gets across, though, it cuts those same paths, but then it runs into the resistance, so it actually fuels off this way and goes in there. So we have multiple sources into the Rockies that are all threading together, literally, in the eddies of the global flood to form the laramide orogeny of the Rockies, which I believe is this area specifically. I don't know if it goes further north. Look at Bighorn. Chakra. Oh, chakra bleu. Wow. Wow. So they know that, but they don't know it's the center of the eddy that it is. Bighorn apparently looks like that. That's crazy. So sediment fills this area practically. You can see the currents going this way. Possibly going different points. One current here, one current here, one current here, one current here, one, like subtler ones over here that are all kind of fanning out into resistance here that maybe broke through at some point. But deflecting off a Bighorn going down. But so we got this, the Rockies formed from the Missoula flood, the Hudson Bay eddy, the Bonneville flood, and the whole eddies, all the global flood associated with it. But like these sources of water are playing a role. I don't know if it's like the Missoula specifically in terms of time frame. I might be misnomering Missoula to being like the whole of the floods in the area when that's specific to the Younger Dryas time frame. I don't know. There are certainly many floods in the area dating back pretty far. All of them. And just the whole of the process. But in terms of what's actually scientifically recognized as a flood, the whole Earth flooded, but there's only some regions that are recognized to have had the flood aspect that is part of the flood that happened there. Like this one, Missoula flood, is considered acceptable because it's from the glaciers and whatever else and blah blah blah. It's acceptable. It can't be a global flood though. No sir. It can't be that the global flood had certain regions that were more energetic and sculpting than other regions, to a point where we look at them all and some of them look eroded and some of them don't, in the way that we would expect from a global flood, because we just don't know what we're talking about really. Science has been taken over by people who reject the Bible pretty much. In terms of who's calling the shots, you're not allowed to say something that supports the Bible. Oh, you're not a scientist. Did you seriously think you could research the flood? Thought we told you that didn't happen. What do you mean you're considering it? We told you it didn't happen. What's the problem? And I won't say it. I almost said it. Not today. I'll say it. And some people don't want to hear it, and some people don't want to hear it. Do I say it? It's rude, but it's also true. I don't want to say it. Something about 6 million off. We'll just leave it at that. So, then there's this penis-like thing here going into it all, where the Yellowstone is forming, because again there's this other current flowing up this way. So it's like, where do I go? It's probably exhausting out this way and out this way. probably exhausting like through here, something of that nature. Possibly going into California and exhausting through that way or something. But as this current over in this area has like focal points happening, it's leading to the progression towards Yellowstone that happens from the Columbia River basalt towards Yellowstone. I don't know, maybe this will do it. Like this. 15.7, 17.2, and then like as this stops, this happens, so it's moving the focal point over here, over here, over here, over here to here. So maybe this area was actually much more dense physically because of the compressive forces to a point where it actually like blew the region apart and removed the resistance from a lot of the region and really allowed the flow to propagate over here so that this focal point could move over here, where essentially on this side there's a current flowing down this way, current flowing down this way, over this way. The eddy between them is here, but then the eddy moves over here, where the artery is pointing and this boundary is pointing. So it's flowing along boundaries to another boundary. So it basically moves from the western boundary of their interaction where an eddy is going on over here to then move over this way. Which compresses all this material at Yellowstone area. Ultimately forms Yellowstone. Also relates to other things for sure at that point. I'm trying to think what I have realized to relate to Yellowstone and other things. Like in Asia, like the Mantle Puncture Hall and things. I'm pretty sure this relates to Yellowstone. Certainly relates to Bighorn. Not completely sure about Yellowstone. I mean, it was there, but it moved way before Yellowstone was there, probably, so it's not like directly related. So many details. Just looking at this, I'm like, oh my god, there's so many details that I've even looked at. Like, I've freaking looked at these things, read papers on them, made videos about them, and I'm not even sure if these things are like compatible and because I don't remember the details. So essentially, anyway, this moves over here into this other current and into this current. So it's running into the resistance of the eddy. I wonder, is it pointing at Hudson Bay? I know Hudson Bay is huge, but it is. As if the current is flowing like in opposition to the direction of the center of the eddy. Possibly contributing to moving it. Or like the force applied into the eddy was almost like a function of how much mass it accumulated against it on here. Okay, dudes. That's pretty cool, though. It didn't occur to me that they're literally threading these currents together from different eddies to join them and then like form North America out of the Rencha, perhaps, because these are energetically coupled to the Rencha through this actual threaded bond of the current flows that were present in the locations. It's pretty much down to that corner. So it's like out here underneath. So it's like these currents that they ended up going down under and cutting into the crust here and actually making a like mid-ocean rift where there's one of the things of interest that got me looking at it was that the bacteria or the microbes found in the waters there are much more like mid-ocean rift microbes, because the current flow here, even though it's just this current here, was physically cutting North America apart. It was along the margin of where they newly accreted terrain was attaching to the Rencha, kind of like over here. But in this case, the current flow went through and just collapsed it. Couldn't actually support the structure that was forming here. Too much current, whereas over here it had a lot of current to the point where it really influenced the terrain and effectively formed even evidence of rifting down here, but it didn't cut it apart. It's still sutured together and even has elements of suturing in the way the currents flowed. So cool. Okay, dudes. Till next time, thanks. See you then.